Week 3 is here. We're going to be taking a look at some players to start, some players to sit, and a sleeper for you guys to stream. Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always. I got Dave Kluge with me. Dave, this could be a quick one. We're just going to go through these names rapid fire. We've got 10 names. Each of us have 3 starts. We each have 1 sleeper and 1 player that we recommend sitting this week. So, Dave, why don't you kick us off? Who are you looking to start in week 3?
I've got Dak Prescott as my QB4 on the week. We have seen the Bears now. I'm sure you saw the Adam Schefter tweet yesterday. Quarterbacks playing against the Bears have been the NFC Offensive Player of the Week in back-to-back weeks. It's as simple as like they made JJ McCarthy look good for half a game. And I think that just
Right.
is a testament to how bad they are. Jalen Johnson is banged up with an injury right now. They got torched by Jared Goff for 5 touchdowns. There was a lot of talk this offseason, preseason, that the Cowboys under Brian Schottenheimer were going to be a run-first team, but they've been right at their expected pass rate. They're throwing the ball a fair amount. The over-under in this game is 50.5 points, which implies that there's going to be a shootout. And I say Dak Prescott, but really this is like a 5-for-1 start. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, Javonte Williams, fire them all up. Like, even if you're desperate, throw Cavante Turpin in your lineup. Like, this is going to be a shootout. The Bears defense is terrible. Start your Cowboys this week.
Well, I'm glad you said that because my first start of the week is George Pickens going
Look at
up
that.
against the Bears. Yeah, it really is that simple. You've got the top corners for the Bears are on the injury report, and we know that Pickens should kind of almost each week be locked in as a strong wide receiver two in any format. And last week, I think that the overtime matchup and the nature of that Giants game sort of saved everything. But 5 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets for Pickens. Like, the targets are starting to get there, despite the fact that the run game is going well. Like, the Cowboys are remaining balanced, and this defense is just bad enough for Dallas that they have to keep passing. So I know you mentioned already the implied point total, Dak, everything that's going on with that offense, going up against the Bears. I mean, Dave, we saw that game against the Lions. 5
Mhm.
passing touchdowns to Detroit wide receivers. I want every single bit of the passing offense for the Dallas Cowboys this week.
Yep. Sometimes it's just that simple. And of course, because like everybody is so in on this game, it's going to be like a
It's going to be
3-6
6-9.
slugfest. Yeah.
I gave the kickers a few extra reps there.
There you go.
Uh, all right, we're moving quick. Let's go to our next starts of the week. Dave, who are you going with?
Keenan Allen. And I think he has just kind of like pushed himself into must start territory at this point. There's a lot of talk like, is Pat Surtain going to stick on Quinton Johnston, or is he going to stick on Lad McConkey? I don't really care about that because I do know that he's not going to stick to Keenan Allen. Like, that's not the type of cornerback that he is. So Keenan Allen working out of the slot, working underneath, he is going to get his normal target share. He's tied right now for the team lead in targets with Lad McConkey. He's second in receiving yards behind Quinton Johnston. You can see that like when they get to the short areas of the field near the red zone, when they need to move the chains, Herbert is looking at Allen. He had 1,200 plus yards in this offense just 2 years ago, led the Bears in target share last year. I think a lot of people see the age, 33 years old, and really get scared off. But Keenan Allen drastically changed the way that he plays football after that ACL tear. He was a very good athlete coming into the league, had to really learn some of the technical elements of the game. And he's always had the big ball skills, but now when he's able to just like have this release package that nobody can really stop, he's just that underneath safety blanket for Justin Herbert. I know this could be a tough matchup, but I'm just not scared off by any matchup when it comes to the Chargers. This looks like one of the best offenses in the league. They're going to score points regardless of who they're playing against. And as much fear as there is about Pat Surtain, I don't think that he's going to see much coverage on Keenan Allen. So firing him up inside my top 30, and like even that feels too low. I've got him as my wide receiver 28, but he kind of feels like just a plug and play wide receiver too at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's the beauty of Keenan Allen here is I wouldn't say plug and play wide receiver two. I've got him at like a wide receiver 3 each week, like regardless of opponent, just because we know the volume is going to be there. But the beauty of it is that I don't think Keenan Allen is ever going to be the guy to draw the number one corner attention from
Right.
the other team if they are a shadowing team, right? And even if they're going against a zone defense, Keenan Allen works really well against zone defense. Like, there's just too many things to worry about with this Chargers offense where Keenan Allen is probably like number 3 on the priority list for a defense here. So yeah, I love this. And he's sort of just an auto start every week. I've got him on a couple teams. He's my wide receiver 3 or flex play in a lot of leagues. I think you got to fire him up.
And in hindsight, it's so funny that like there was fear about his age, but Cooper Cup, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, like all these other old receivers were getting drafted so far ahead of Keenan Allen. It just seemed like when he signed with the Chargers, there wasn't the ADP movement that there should have been. And I've seen a lot of people like, should I sell high on Keenan Allen? No, I think this is just one of those like, congratulations, you found a weekly starter in round 12 of your draft. There's
Yep.
no reason to sell high or move off of him. Just enjoy the ride. Like he could easily like. Would it surprise you one bit if he does what he did 2 years ago and has 1,200 yards again in this offense? Because I don't think that's out of the question at all.
That's the thing is he's not a sell high because like he's not doing anything out of the norm of what
This
he
is what
has
he
done
does.
throughout his career.
Right,
Like
right.
it's not like he's had 5 touchdowns on 6 receptions or something crazy. That's not sustainable. This is very, very like per
Real.
the status quo for Keenan Allen.
Exactly.
All right, I'm gonna give you this is rare. But I'm gonna give you a tight end start because I think people are still
Ooh.
wondering, is this real? Is there do I need what do I need to do with streamers? I know there's a lot of people worried about like their tight ends that are on IR or tight ends that are underperforming. Juwan Johnson, I think, is just the real deal now. And when we can say this, Spencer Rattler has actually looked pretty good as the starting quarterback for the Saints this year. And um, man, I wasn't expecting it to be this good. Like I knew Spencer Rattler had some potential, but it has been solid for the Saints. And Juwan Johnson so far in the season, 13 catches, 125 yards, and a touchdown on 20 targets over the first 2 weeks. And honestly, Dave, like you and I talked about this, he was one dropped pass away from that being another touchdown and like another 20 yards. Like this was, and that was a really tight bang bang play. So right now he's averaging over 15 and a half PPR points throughout these 2 games. This is a must start tight end each week. And it's not that Juwan Johnson has all of a sudden broken out. It's just that this is who Spencer Rattler likes to target. He's going after the tight end. And given the landscape of the tight end position right now in fantasy, it's not great. So Juwan Johnson's going up against Seattle. They gave up 2 tight end touchdowns in week 1. This is a tight end one must start in all leagues.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of people like Juwan Johnson kind of flew under the radar early in his career, but he was signed as a wide receiver and
He
played
was
wide
another Darren
receiver.
Waller.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And like we see like when you have to make that transition from wide receiver to tight end, it's tough. And that's something that we talked about. Like Oronde Gadsden coming in this year, he made that transition in college because he said, I know how hard it is to make that transition in the league. My
Yep.
coaches recommended that I make this transition in college so that the learning curve isn't as steep when I hit the NFL. Juwan Johnson played wide receiver for 2 years, then converted to tight end. And we have seen little flashes here and there because he's a very good receiver, of course, but now it seems like it's all starting to come together. And at age 29, like those are peak years for a tight end. So I'm completely with you. We saw it last year with Spencer Rattler. They've got this connection together. Yeah, Juwan Johnson, I've got him inside my top 10 this week. Just an easy start.
All right. Let's go to our third start of the week. Dave, who are you going with?
So I kind of took some cream off the top when I started the show. Like Dak Prescott, easy start. Keenan Allen, easy start. I'm going to push the envelope a little bit with a guy that maybe isn't going to be an easy start, but Quinshon Judkins going up against Green Bay. I know a lot of people are just going to say like, I'm not starting anybody against Green Bay. This
He was
defense is
almost a
good.
sit for me, so I'm curious to see how you're gonna
Yeah,
sprinkle this one in.
I think it's just that he's really good. He led the teams in rushing or led the team in rushing attempts and yards just a few days after joining the team. Like signed his contract, logged 2 practices, and then just immediately became their lead back. And sure, a lot of that came late in the game, but he just looks so much better than everybody else in that running back room. I watched all of the tape, but that 31-yard rush especially just shows exactly why they drafted Quinshon Judkins. Power, burst, contact, speed, like ability to get through the second level, and nobody else on that team really has that skill set. So I know people are going to get scared off by the matchup, but I'm still starting him. He's also an inside runner. So, a lot of the fears that we had last week with Corey Krosky Merritt trying to bounce runs outside where he's got to deal with Rashawn Gary on one side and Micah Parsons on the other. That's not who Quinshon Judkins is. He's just going to take it right through the middle of that defense. I think that we're going to see this guy. They drafted him early in round 2. And when you draft a running back there, especially a guy with Quinshon Judkins' profile, a workhorse running back, you assume that it's only a matter of time before he's getting 18, 20, 25 touches per game. We already saw them give him 13 last week. I think that only grows going into week 2. So, well, yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. I think he's still a volume-based play here. I've got him right now ranked as my my running back 25 on the week. So technically, by definition, that makes him an RB3. But I think there's a lot of people that are worried about starting him, and I'm still firing him up in a handful of leagues this week.
I'll say this. I think the thing to watch with these Browns running backs is going to be who's going to be out there on the passing downs. I know that Judkins can do it, and he's a much improved pass blocker over
I
his
think it's going to
final
be
year at Ohio State.
Ford.
Ford, okay, interesting. I was assuming maybe a little bit more Dylan Sampson out there. Um,
Ford ran like 4 times as many routes last week. Samson got the targets, but
and
Jerome Ford just
yeah,
wasn't getting targeted for whatever reason.
yeah, and it was obviously a different game in week one as well. So I'll be curious to see who it is. But if Judkins can be the guy that's out there getting targets and running some routes, this is once we've talked about it, kind of one of the only ways that you can try to go combat this pass rush and the edge setting of this Packers defense and their front seven. So getting those targets out into the flats, the Judkins might be the key there.
And I got to give it to
Uh,
Bill too. We said that that was kind of his tendency in week 1 was to bounce it outside. He knew the assignment going into week 2, and it wasn't good, but he did run up the middle on every single one of his rushing
mhm.
attempts. So, was
You know,
happy to
you
see
know they
him.
were talking about that in the film room. They're like,
Uh-huh.
dude, just hit the hole.
Yeah, you are not going to outrun Micah Parsons if you try to bounce this. And like,
Right.
yeah, and he did. It wasn't pretty. He picked up, a few yards every time he touched the ball, but better than the 8-yard losses he'd be taking if he was trying to bounce him outside.
Yeah. All right. I've got one for you guys. There's a little bit of a trust me moment here, and we're hoping for a get right game. It's a good opponent, meaning good for the running back. I'm going with Isiah Pacheco. And the film is not pretty right now on Isiah Pacheco, but the film is not pretty on the Chiefs offense altogether. And I'm wondering, when are we going to get that moment where they break back into what is normal for them, where we don't have Patrick Mahomes on pace for 1,000 yards rushing, and we don't have an offense where essentially nobody can catch the ball. Going up against the Giants defense here, this defense has been very susceptible to running backs. They allowed 80+ yard rushers in back to back weeks and a touchdown to each of those running backs, one of them being Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Uh, Listen, this is this kind of plays into what Pacheco has been trying to do, where he keeps trying to bounce everything outside and get out into the edge and be able to run downhill and run over a corner. And that's kind of where the Giants struggle, setting the edge against the run game. Now, there are some things you're going to see this on Twitter, and it's the same things I'm seeing on NFL Pro when we're looking at the film. Isiah Pacheco is struggling to follow his blocks because he's trying to turn everything into a big play. This has been something that has been talked about by the staff. And they're actually, like, there's reports coming out, it's like they're kind of confused because in practice, Isiah Pacheco looks good. And there's a
Mhm.
mental aspect to this where he's getting in the games and just trying to turn everything into a big play. So I'm thinking this is the get right game for him going up against the Giants' poor run defense. The Chiefs have had some pretty tough matchups early with the Chargers and Eagles, especially while trailing. So they haven't had a real opportunity to run the ball. I do think this could be a game where they control it a bit more. They get some more running in there. Pacheco does have a get right game. I'm not saying it's going to be something crazy, 120 yards and a touchdown, but I think he's a RB3 flex play that you can keep in your lineups this week. And if it's not this week, then Dave, I think we got to be done with Isiah Pacheco.
Yeah, and I'm definitely, where you're kind of taking a wait and see approach with Quinshon Judkins. That's kind of where I am right now with Isiah Pacheco for the same reasons. Like you said, like I yesterday morning I watched all of Isiah Pacheco's film just to see like what is going on here. And I
It's
think
not
the
pretty.
biggest problem is the offensive line. Like the offensive line, they're missing Joe Tooney. Like him not being there, they are not getting that same inside leverage that they
Oh,
used to. But when
Kingsley
I watch
Suamataia is not number 76, the left guard, is
Mhm.
not good right now, man. It is bad.
Right. And I think the problem, Isaiah Pacheco is very good at taking what's given to him. And if he gets
Mm,
into the second level, he can truck through a linebacker or defensive
right.
back, but he doesn't have the best vision and doesn't have the best footwork. And that is something that Kareem Hunt is really good at. Like he doesn't have the burst, but he is really good at finding the crease and getting skinny and following his blockers. So, I kind of put out like my film analysis on what I saw on Twitter yesterday, and I think that somebody just said it so succinctly in a reply. They said Isaiah Pacheco can run, but he can't see, and Kareem Hunt can see, but he can't run. And I think
Right.
that just like perfectly sums up this backfield right now. And that's why we talked in the cold open about like maybe there's a trade for a running back at some point. Maybe we see Brashard Smith open up a little bit because it sounds like he is having, some strong practices. So I'm okay taking a wait and see approach, but like you said, sometimes it's better to just like trust it. And this Giants run defense has not been good, so I could see him bouncing back this week. I just don't have the cojones to put him in my lineup yet.
You think the Chiefs, if something doesn't work out here, right? What about the Chiefs maybe trading for someone like a Travis Etienne, who's in the last year of his deal and looking good, and the Jaguars are willing to give Bashaw Tutin a little more run?
Yeah, I mean, I would like that. They already traded away Tank Bigsby. I'd be really shocked to see him
Do
just,
it
like,
again.
trade away all the running backs, and then once they trade away Travis Etienne, then we'll be like, "Now trade away Bashal Tootin and make LaQuinn Allen the
And
guy,"
now we have our LaQuint Allen. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. We talked about that trade in the preseason. Maybe with like Ken Walker looking better last week. Now maybe Zach Charbonnet is a potential trade candidate.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Alvin Kamara would be the most fun for sure. But we'll see how this one pans out.
All right, Dave. Let's go negative here for a minute. We're going to talk about each of us giving one player that we want to sit this week. Why don't you go first?
Dude, I was shocked. We both put our rankings up on Fantasy Bros Expert Consensus rankings, and
Mhm.
when I did that, they let you know about any big outliers that you might have in your rankings, and it said, "Are you sure you want to rank Marquise Brown this low because he's our consensus wide receiver 32 this week?" Which means that he's a starter. Like Marquise Brown is being ranked as a wide receiver 3, and I don't know what anybody saw from last week that makes them want to start Marquise Brown this week. Like this has nothing to do about the matchup or anything like that. He's just not the player he used to be. I think the injuries have piled up. He lost some speed. We know like a big part of this Chiefs offense is getting the balls to players who can either create after the catch near the line of scrimmage or guys that have speed to get behind defenses. And I don't know if Marquise Brown can do either of those things. I think he's just kind of like in no man's land in this Chiefs offense right now. And I think people are still just holding on to hope from that 16 target performance in week one, which we've talked about a handful of times. Felt like it just kind of came out of necessity after the Worthy injury. They had a game plan to attack those linebackers. But even in that, like those 16 targets, Marquise Brown didn't do a lot with those 16 targets. Like he looked very pedestrian in those attempts. So um, I didn't think I needed to talk about Marquise Brown as a sit this week. But when one of the biggest fantasy websites out there is recommending him as a start, I feel like I need to kind of pump the brakes and say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not starting Marquise Brown anywhere that I have him this week.
Yeah, there's I, I don't know that we can trust any one single wide receiver on the Chiefs offense right now. I think the only players from this Chiefs offense that you're starting or willing to start is Mahomes, probably Kelsey. If you're desperate at running back because you drafted him early, it's Pacheco and you're giving him one more week. And that's a maybe, I think, for a lot of people who have probably found better alternatives at this point. But I don't know if there's anyone else in this offense that you can trust right now.
Oh, just wait. I might have one in
Oh,
when we talk
just
about our deep
wait.
sleepers.
Oh, just wait. All right, I'm gonna give you guys the player that I am sitting this week, and I think I need to see what happens with this backfield before I just plug him into my lineup. And it's Tyrone Tracy going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and um, wasn't great to see how things changed from week one to week two. 74% of the snaps in week one down to 42% of the snaps in week two, and it wasn't just like Cam Scatabo was coming in and taking short yardage stuff. Like he was in there on passing plays as well.
Mhm.
This was, um, I would say, relatively unexpected and kind of out of nowhere. It wasn't like the game was out of reach or they had some sort of lead where they adjusted things. This was a tight game that went into overtime and they were just like, we're going to keep using more Scatterboot. He was the hot hand. And that's what worries me here is that the Giants are going to take a bit more. I don't think we know who the real running back is over there. I don't think it's Scatterboot at the moment either. I think there's going to be a hot hand approach. And that's sort of what worries me here, on top of the fact that the Chiefs are actually a tough run defense. So I think if you have to start a Tyrone Tracy or Cam Scatterboot as a running back 3, or you have multiple flex spots and you're just desperate, you can and hope one of them falls in the end zone. But I'm not trying to start Tyrone Tracy anywhere if I don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I was very firmly in the Tracy over Scattaboo camp this preseason, but in my week 3 rankings, I've got Scattaboo ahead of Tracy.
Me
And it's
too.
not even about like the film or the analytics or the metrics or anything like that. I think Scattaboo is just like he's a coach's player. Like he does all of the things that coaches love. Like not only on the field where you see him trucking through defenders and playing this very physical brand of football, but also like getting players pumped up on the sidelines. I'm sure you saw that clip going around where he's like yelling in Russell Wilson's face and like headbutting teammates and like just getting
Yeah.
everybody riled up. I almost wonder if he is kind of just taking on this role as like the heart of the team. And meanwhile, Tyrone Tracy too. He also had some pretty critical comments about the game plan after week one. So I wonder how much he's just like kind of in the doghouse right now. So you've got Tyrone Tracy, you know, losing the coach's favor with his post game comments, and Cam Scadaboo out here playing like a wrecking ball. Like I don't even know like the style of play that he has. I mean, it seems like we're seeing that changing of a guard, and I'm not overreacting to it too much. I only have Scadaboo a few spots ahead of Tyrone Tracy, but if that trend carries over into week 3, I'm going to be very nervous for all the Tyrone Tracy that I drafted.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our sleepers. These are the players that we can stream at various positions. If you have multiple flex spots, you're in a deep league, you've had the injuries, maybe you had to pick someone up, or just maybe a player that you didn't expect to be starting this week. So, Dave, hit us with your first sleeper.
Yeah, this is one that I'm just like really shocked to see that, I just talked about how I don't like Marquise Brown all that much this week. And then when I look in consensus rankings, I see Tyquan Thornton over 30 spots behind him in wide receiver rankings. I have Tyquan Thornton ahead of Marquise Brown in my rankings this week because I talk about how there's like kind of 2 roles for Chiefs receivers. One of those roles being the near the line of scrimmage yak guy, and one of those roles being the speedster that can get behind defenses. And that's exactly what Tyquan Thornton has been doing so far. He is pulling a 31.4 yard average depth of target. That is absolutely insane. And this isn't on like 2, 3 targets. He's pulled 9 targets this year, and they're coming an average of over 30 yards downfield. He's pulling 48.8% of the team's air yards right now. That's 5th highest among all wide receivers. Like we're looking at Malik Neighbors, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I'm drawing a blank right now. Zay Flowers, and then
Yeah,
Calvin
I was like,
Austin kind
I
of
don't,
sneaks
I
in there
really
for.
can't help you here. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know who he's talking about.
And then Calvin Austin kind of snuck in at 4th, and there's Tyquan Thornton at 5th. And then this is a guy that I think a lot of people just forgot about, but there was a lot of draft excitement for Tyquan Thornton. He was a 2nd-round pick, ran a 4.28 40-yard dash, never really found his footing in New England, but we heard a lot of good things out of preseason this year. He made the team, and I think that was the first big hurdle to make. And now with Rice being injured, Xavier Worthy, or Rice being suspended, Xavier Worthy being injured, Tyquan Thornton is kind of operating as the team's number 1 right now. And I don't think that it's a volume-based play. Like he's not going to be a 12-target type of player, but he's somebody that you can put in your flex spot that has the opportunity to score from 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 yards out. And if he does that, he's making your week. So a very risky player. I'm not going to ignore the risk, but there's just so much upside here. And a guy who right now is on waivers in a ton of leagues.
Yeah, and that's like I wouldn't necessarily call him the number 1 on this team because we don't even know what the heck a number 1 wide receiver looks like on this team at the moment. But I think he is sort of that replacement for what Tyreek Hill used to be, for what Xavier Worthy, what they wanted him to be. It's just Patrick Mahomes works so well with the deep threat, and then we had all of the defenses are switching to 2 high shells and it's stopping the Chiefs, and now they're going to Travis Kelce, and like there was so much of that, and now it's like the Chiefs don't have any of the weapons in their arsenal anymore. Like they're not using swords or guns or anything. Like they're just going hand-to-hand combat, and it looks ugly when they show up to games. So Tyquan Thornton like kind of gives them an arrow back in the quiver, and like they can actually get out there and do a little bit of what Patrick Mahomes likes to do, which is chuck the ball deep.
I got to fact check myself. I said Zay Flowers. I was, going off of memory here. Garrett Wilson is 3rd in the league in team air yard share. Not Zay Flowers, but Tyquan Thornton still at 5th overall, and that's a pretty important metric.
Dave, that's where you make sure that you leave it wrong so that the people correct you in the comments. And that's an
Oh, I'm
algorithm
sure they're already
booster.
correcting me in the comments. Yeah, that
They do
that
not
40
wait. They do
that
not wait
45
more than
seconds
15
was more
seconds.
than enough to say you idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. The typing scores have never been faster. All right. I'm going to give you my sleeper here. And it's a player I talked about earlier in the week on our Wednesday show just yesterday. I am willing to start Matthew Golden as a sleeper this week going up against Cleveland. And a big reason is that the Cleveland Browns have been very good against running backs. And that's not me saying that you need to bench Josh Jacobs, but I think that the pace and the game script of this game might be a little different than we think. I think we're seeing Packers have been so good, Browns have been so bad. This is going to be a boat race, man. Packers are going to crush them. And sure, they might, but the Browns are kind of like fun bad. We've talked about this before, but like they are just good enough to stay around in games. And if they can stop the run, it's going to force the Packers to be a little bit more creative with what their offensive game plan is. And Dave, like they've gone up against good running backs and good offenses, the Browns have. They held Derrick Henry and Chase Brown to an average of just 33 rushing yards per game here. So that's why I say if Josh Jacobs is slowed down, there's going to be other things that need to happen. Something you talked about in the last episode is like the Packers were adjusting on the fly. They didn't
Mm.
really know what to do once Jaden Reed goes out. So it's like, okay, Dontavian Wicks, you have been in this role before. Let's get you back in there. But now they get the whole week to game plan. It's actually something Jordan Love has talked about in his press conferences after practice, talking about, yeah, we need to get Matthew Golden involved in this offense more. If those two just barely missed plays happened last week where he almost scores touchdowns, we're talking about him as the wide receiver 5 on the week in fantasy. I sat down and like did the math of like what points were missed out on those. He would have been the wide receiver 5. The Browns secondary, especially against wide receivers, have not been great. They just gave up 4 receiving touchdowns to the Ravens last week, 4 players in double digit PPR fantasy points last week. I expect the Packers to look at that game film, understand that, hey, this team can be beaten in the secondary with our wide receivers. We need to get Golden more involved. Let's utilize him this way.
Did you see the yesterday they asked Jordan Love kind of like how they were going to get past Jaden Reed's injury, and he specifically called out Matthew Golden. He says there's
Yeah,
definitely going to be
it's
opportunities
MG.
for other guys, but definitely MG. So I like to see that. And also, our friend Matt Harmon does his reception perception. Did you see the target tree that came out for Matthew Golden? I mean, it's kind of what
I
we
have not,
expected. It
but
is
I know
hilarious.
he's always open essentially.
Well, it's outs, corners, nines, post, and digs, which are all
Yeah.
of the routes atop the tree.
Yeah.
Green, like he's that's what he's running. And then you look at the comebacks, curls, slants, flats, screens, red.
Just
Like he's
not
not
running
running
those.
any of those. Like he is being used exclusively as a downfield threat. Jordan Love has the highest intended air yards per attempt of any receiver in the league right now. So we're looking at a guy who's like purely in a role where he's getting downfield, paired up with a quarterback who loves throwing the deep ball. Like it's there. It hasn't happened. They've missed each other a handful of times, but we see this often with new receivers too, where like they overshoot them, they undershoot them, and then by like week 3, 4, 5, they kind of figure out where that speed is, and then they start hitting them in game. It's only a matter of time before Matthew Golden explodes.
My problem is I tried to trade for Matthew Golden in a couple of my home leagues, and a bunch of the guys that have him on their roster, they're like, dude, I heard your show. Like, no, I'm gonna hold
Dude,
on to him.
it is
It's the
impossible
most
to trade
annoying
at
thing.
this point. It is I like don't get me wrong. I love doing the show. It is so much fun and like just getting to talk football all the time. But like 90% of the people that I'm in leagues with watch this show. So like I have to like record a show, try to get a trade done before like 4 hours later when the show is uploaded and people are going to listen to it. It's so hard. Like we just show all of our cards all the time. It's like playing poker with our cards up on the table. It is
Yeah,
so freaking hard. Like I
just
still
living out the Truman Show. Like everyone's just a voyeur of your life right now when it comes to fantasy football.
have you seen my team in the listener league? Like, I'm sure you remember at the time, I dropped more expletives in that chat than I normally do in an entire year because it's all people who listen to the show. Like, it's our most
Yeah.
diehard listeners. And I was getting my teeth kicked in that draft. Like, every player that I wanted was getting picked before me. So I ended up, I'm looking at my team right now. Like, these are not my guys. I ended up drafting a bunch of guys that it was just like, well, this is how the draft's
I
fallen to me.
mean,
And
you've
sure
got
enough,
DeAndre Swift, Isiah Pacheco, Nico Collins, Drake London, T. Higgins, Mark Andrews, Trevion Henderson, Keenan Allen.
yeah,
You got
I got Keenan
Olamide
Allen, felt good
Zaccheaus.
about that. Felt good about DeAndre Swift, was able to get him, but like,
Yeah.
I wasn't a Nico Collins drafter. I wasn't a T. Higgins drafter. Even my bench, like, I got Olamide Zaccheaus for the brand, but here I am sitting at 0-2. The team just looks terrible. Like, I'm not seeing any upside here. That was without a doubt the hardest draft that I have ever done in my life because it's just people who consume our show and like all of the players that we like, and it made for a very, very frustrating experience, but a lot of fun. I'm enjoying that league. Great guys there.
I'll just say this: that league, I am second. Dave, what place are you in?
I think I'm in dead last. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we know who the
I've been
listeners
lucky.
listen to.
No, I've actually been really lucky. My points against are, I think, the lowest in the league. Yeah, absolute lowest in the league by a good margin. So we'll
Yeah, I
see how
just
that
looked it up.
turns
I
out.
am in dead last.
Yeah, I'm getting lucky right now. All right.
way it
Well, I
goes.
think that's gonna wrap it up for us. But week 3, make sure you join on the Football Guys live YouTube channel, where you are going to have the Sunday morning live start sit Q&A. We're going to have Joey Wright, Jeff Bell, Adam Hutchison, a whole cast of panelists here from Football Guys helping you guys set your lineups for week 3. So make sure you join them for that. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.